gathered together. Starting with a question that has come in advance from our online internet-based audience, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here has. What is one thing you would like to be remembered for? Asked by Priyanka on Instagram. One thing you'd like to be remembered for. You know, there's a beautiful saying, and I don't remember who said it, but it's a beautiful saying that people will not remember what you said or what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. They'll remember how they felt when they were with you. And it's interesting if you think back to loved ones who have departed or people you knew who have since departed. When you hold them in your mind's eye, in your memory, what I found is that's really true. You don't remember so much of what they actually said. It's not like you actually are hearing things that they said so much. And it's not that you're actually picturing like what they did so much. But when you think about them, it's this felt sense experience of what it was like to be with them. And that felt sense experience may arise while you've got a vision of being together, doing something. But the strongest part of that memory is of how you felt. So for example, if I think about my grandmother, I can certainly remember a lot of things we did together, but what's most prominent in my memory are the things in which I felt in a way. So I remember, for example, like coming home from school and seeing her on the couch and kind of sneaking up from behind her to give her hugs and kisses. And she was not a very physically affectionate person, and I've always been very physically affectionate. And so I used to tease her, and I'd come up and I'd kiss her a lot and, hug her a lot. And she'd always say, enough, enough, enough. But that beautiful connection and love. So I can picture the scene. I can picture her sitting on the couch. But really what the memory is a memory of being loved and a memory of that connection. So if I had to think about what I'd want to be remembered for, again, it's not so much, oh, she said this, or she said that, or she did this, or did that. But if we're remembered for how we make people feel, then it would be such a beautiful blessing to be remembered for helping people feel and know that truth of themselves, for being able to be a vehicle of, a reflection of, a catalyst for people to actually feel that fullness of themselves, that truth of themselves, that perfection of themselves. If I had to think about how I would want people to remember me, I would want it to be that they would, in remembering me, they would again have that feeling, or still have that feeling of, oh yeah. And that they would smile and know that whatever struggle they're going through or challenge they're going through, that who they are is full and complete and divine. So yeah, I think that's what I would want if I had a magic wand for that. Beautiful. Other questions? Any questions that anyone? Yeah, just come up to the mic.
Hello. Yeah. Ma'am, my childhood was financially very difficult.
I'm sorry?
My childhood was financially very difficult. Very, very difficult. At the age of 22, I became a chartered accountant and then things changed. But till date, it has been more than 12 years. But it is 24 into 7. It is only one thing that moves around in the mind. It is because I've seen that scarcity. So 24 into 7, it is all about money, money, money. Just think that way to how to make more money, more money. So which is not correct, I understand. But the mind has been dwelled in such a way 24 into 7.
Sure.
Yeah.
विनोद भैया देख लेना अगर वो आवाज़ थोड़ा सा कम हो सकता है. धन्यवाद. So this is a perfect description of exactly how the mind works and why that which happens in our childhood is so important. If you had known abundance in your childhood, but then you had gone through a period of scarcity later in your life, and then you had come back to abundance, that period of scarcity would not have the impact on your mind that it has when it happens in childhood. And it's why that which we hear, that which we experience in childhood, it plays this huge role in our life. And it's why, as parents, we have such an incredible opportunity to really shape in so many ways, not just our children's childhood, but actually their entire life. That which they experience, that which they learn, stays with us. So you experience scarcity in childhood, really difficult times, and of course it stays with you. It's very, very, very common. The way through that is to let go of that idea, meaning we hold memories. It's not forget. You hold the memory, but you let go of the emotional component to the memory. So you may have a memory of, oh yes, there wasn't enough. But that fear component of oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, which is what accompanies that level of scarcity, you let that go. It's not easy, but it is simple. There isn't today one cell in your body that was there when you were experiencing that in your childhood. So it's not like you can say, well, this is the arm that, didn't have, or this was the arm that was abused, or this was the arm that was harmed. Not one cell of your body from those days still exists today. The cells of our body are constantly regenerating. Every 7 or 8 years, you've got an entirely brand new body. The outside part happens very, very quickly. The organs take a little bit longer. But within a period of 7, 8 years, it's a whole new body. It's just a matter of letting go of the mental attachment to that. Instead, try to fill your mind with thoughts of gratitude. And today, as I was saying in the art, is a perfect opportunity to start, whether we celebrate Thanksgiving like that here in India or not. It doesn't matter. Take the opportunity. In America, it's Thanksgiving. Chalo. We have Thanksgiving every day here, but we'll take that opportunity and just start a practice of being grateful. Because what gratitude does, in addition to bringing joy and peace and spiritual connection and all of the things I was talking about in Arati, in addition to that, what gratitude does is it tells our mind, my cup runneth over. If I don't have enough, it's very hard to be grateful. If I'm living in lack, then my experience is give me, rather than, oh my God, thank you so much for all that I have. And so if you can shift your mindset to a gratitude mindset, automatically it's going to change that underlying pattern from scarcity to abundance. I always say abundance is not about what we have, but about how we feel about what we have. I know a lot of people who are fabulously wealthy, like super, super, super rich, but whose felt sense experience is that they're lacking in some way. Ironically, in a lot of cases, they still feel like they're lacking professionally or financially, like they're looking at some competitor, some other company, their own brother, their own cousin brother, whatever it may be. Why does he have more, or that company's doing better? And sometimes it's a lack in another way. Sometimes they feel lacking in happiness, or love, or peace, or meaning in life. And they feel like, I've made billions, but what's the point? Like, what am I doing? And so there's so frequently this sense of lack, even when there's everything that anyone else in the world would die for. And then there's so many people I've met, mostly in India, who have so little. By all of our Western or modern standards of poverty, they would be well below poverty line. But their felt sense experience is of such joy that they're actually richer than the people who have so much but feel empty. And so abundance is really about how you feel about what you have, much more than what you have. So if you can change that, how you feel, some of us have a predisposition. Even if we didn't grow up in scarcity, we have a predisposition toward complaining, right? We all know people like that. You talk to them and what do you hear? Complaints, 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 complaints. Negative, 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 negative. Judgment, 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 judgment. Right? We all know people like that. And in many cases, there are people who have things really good. And if you say to them, why are you so upset? Or, oh, I'm not upset. Like, they don't even realize how negative their own mindset is. How full of complaints and therefore an inner sense of scarcity. Even if they know I have a lot, all of the constant complaining and negativity and judgment is a sign that somewhere inside I'm lacking, or I feel like I'm lacking. And so if you can actually start changing patterns, conscious patterns, subconscious patterns, away from negativity, away from complaining, away from judgment, away from criticism, and into gratitude, what you'll notice is everything changes. So just bring in a gratitude practice, morning, evening. In the morning, what are you grateful for? In the evening, what are you grateful for? Just list as many things as you can, minimum of 5, but as many things as you can. And slowly, 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 it will change your entire perspective. Even when people are difficult, be grateful to them. They're your teachers. If everyone we met said, oh, you're so wonderful, oh, you're the best, oh, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it, yes, 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 we wouldn't really learn anything, right? We learn things through moving through difficult situations. And so if people are difficult, thank them. They're your teachers. When situations are difficult, thank it was a teacher. When you've moved beyond the difficult situation, thank it that you've been able to move into a more comfortable lesson. And just as much as you can, gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Not just morning and evening, but every time, you pick up a glass of water. Just realize how many people in this world don't have access to clean water. And if they do, how scarce it is. Like how many people, even in India, how many people live on barely any water? One woman walks God knows how many kilometers to get one bucket of water. She comes back with, carries it home. It's the water for the entire family. To drink, to cook with, to wash dishes. In some cases, if there's no river or whatever nearby, to bathe in. One bucket. And here we are just with this beautiful opportunity to drink. So every time you pick up a glass of water, every time you sit down to food, every time you go grocery shopping or you're in a restaurant where you've got, oh my God, choices. Like, if you actually have a choice of what to eat, you're in the top, God knows what, tiny, tiny, tiny little itsy bitsy percentage of people on earth. So begin the day with gratitude, end the day with gratitude, but also throughout the day. Every time you drink water, every time you have food, every time you wash your hands, like that you've actually got running water coming out of a tap. Every time you pray. Think about how many people in this world are not actually allowed to practice their religion because they're living somewhere where that particular religion is one that could get you killed or imprisoned. Every choice you make, every decision you make about what you're going to wear when you get dressed every day, when you choose your career, especially for women. Like, think about how many places in the world you don't get to choose what type of clothes you want to wear, or what sort of profession you want to have. Because that freedom isn't there. Those options aren't there. So there's so much to be grateful for. And just the more you can train your brain toward gratitude, the more you will unhook yourself from those patterns of your early life. You'll still remember them, which is great, because we always should remember the possibility of scarcity so that we are ever more grateful for the abundance that we have.
Thank you.
Yeah, and another thing, think about speaking to youngsters, to students about what is it like to actually grow up in scarcity. So many people take what they have for granted, and hearing it from someone who really grew up without opens up a lot of people's eyes. So think about, contacting schools or whatever, colleges, just offering yourself to go and give, an hour talk to an assembly and open some youth's eyes to what is it really like when you don't have enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for sharing. Yes.
Namaste. So yesterday in the Netherlands, I'm from the Netherlands, there were our elections. And the winner turns out to be a very right party. You can compare him a little bit with Trump. So no more refugees, very anti-Islamic. Really, climate change does not exist in his world. So in me there's a lot of fear, a lot of, sadness.
Yeah.
And a disbelief in how is it possible that that happened. Yeah, so how to deal best with that situation.
Yeah, it's so hard. There's at least two aspects to that sort of situation when you discover that your newly elected president is someone who doesn't uphold the values that you do. And especially someone whose values have such a ripple impact over things that matter so much to you. One aspect of it is fear. Oh my God, what's going to happen to the refugees, the environment? The other is a disbelief and a fear and a bit of a shock and kind of unsettling experience of how could all those people have voted for him? I mean, it's one thing if someone comes in as a military dictator through a coup. Then, of course, there's still the fear of what are they going to do, but at least you don't have to deal with the fact that 50% or more of your fellow country people actually elected them. I felt like that when Trump was elected. You know, I tend not to get very involved in politics. I don't pay very much attention to it, but certain things matter a lot to me, like protection of the environment and rights of all people to education and health care, and the idea that America was about to have a president who was about to deny God knows how many people health care and education, who was about to open up protected lands for drilling, for deforestation. It was terrifying in the same way, but along with that was a sense of, who are these people? I thought I knew America. I mean, I should have realized I've been out of America. By that point, it was already more than 20 years. But nonetheless, you have a sense of knowing your people. So here's what you do. Number one, you mourn. You have your experience. You have your felt sense, emotional experience of anger, of loss, of all of the very, very natural and understandable emotions that come up. Because the difference between something like a political election and something like a sporting game, where we may really, really, really love one team, and we may really, really, people love their sporting team so much, and yet people are able to get over it relatively soon because we understand that was a bummer and life goes on. There isn't really any kind of a ripple impact in the universe that's negative. Whereas there are absolutely political leaders, we just saw this in Brazil with the former head, Bolsonaro, who, due to which God knows how much of the Amazon has been lost forever. So there absolutely are decisions that certain political leaders make that ripple out throughout history. I mean, someone like Hitler is probably the most powerful example of that. It's not politics, it's human rights. It's planetary rights. It's the rights of the future, to have a future. So you allow yourself to have the sadness and the anger that arises. You grieve. But then you move on. And you step up, because the good thing about politics is it keeps changing. And so it's not like it's a forever situation. And even with a leader who may have policies that we don't approve of, there's still a lot of things as a public in a democratic world that can be done. And so after you mourn, after you feel sad and angry, regroup. Gather together people who feel like you do and figure out, A, how are you going to protect the things that matter to you even though he's in power? What other avenues do you have to help refugees? What other avenues do you have to work for climate change and the environment? Not everything is political. There's a lot of organizations that are not political organizations, that are not state-run organizations, that are doing a lot of work for refugees, that are doing a lot of work for the environment. So you do whatever you can, and you do whatever you can to make sure that next time someone else gets in power. someone who is going to protect the environment, someone who does have more of a commitment to human rights. Now, I don't know this particular leader, but I'm going to take your word for it that this is someone that we may not necessarily want in power for very long. So do whatever you can do. You know, a lot of times people say, oh, you know, you're spiritual people, you should not be political. And yet, the idea of saying that things like human rights, education, healthcare, protection of the environment, that these things are somehow out of the jurisdiction of spiritual people, is to say that spirituality is focused exclusively on our spirit and not on our humanity. And that isn't the way that I understand spirituality. I understand spirituality as that which takes us from feeling mired and stuck in only our humanity and brings us into connection with spirit, with soul, with divinity, with truth, with consciousness. But that also keeps us anchored in our duty, our dharma, as Krishna speaks about so beautifully in the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, if we were not meant to be political on that level, why did it matter for the Pandavas to win the war? Why did it matter for the Pandavas to again become the rulers of the kingdom? It mattered not because of politics. It mattered not because it was about a name or a party or even a family lineage. It mattered because of dharma. It mattered because of the rights of the people who live there to have access to human rights, to freedom, to health care, to education. And when you have rulers who deny and deprive that, I feel it is most definitely the role of spiritual people to step up and to act and to do our dharma. So, but it's very important that we do it from a place of dharma rather than from a place of politics and othering and polarization. Because here's the thing. The people who voted for the other person are not the other. They are us. They are just as afraid as we are. They're just afraid of different things. They've just been co-opted to believe different things. The problem comes when we turn into us versus them. And whether it's on the basis of race or religion or color or political party. So as you start to work, make sure that it's not us versus them. But it's all of us together for our collective future. Because if we lose the environment, we all lose it. It's not like, you know, different political leaders have some sort of oxygen-rich environment kept over here in a bunker someplace. It's not that they've got some sort of cool extra space over here when climate change happens that they're going to be able to live where it's not warm. We all live on this planet together. That which happens to our oceans happens to all of us. So just remember that there is no other. Bring people together as one. Yeah.
हेलो, प्रणाम। मेरी एक जिज्ञासा है। जब कभी हम किसी भी तीर्थ स्थान या धर्म स्थान पर जाते हैं या फिर गुरु स्थान पर जाते हैं, तो हम सभी की कामना होती है कि हम सुख सौभाग्य के साथ एक और कामना करते हैं, मोक्ष की। मेरी जिज्ञासा ये है कि आखिर ये मोक्ष किसे चाहिए होता है? इस शरीर को चाहिए या फिर आत्मा को चाहिए या फिर इस मन को चाहिए?
Beautiful, beautiful. So he asked, when we come to these sacred and holy pilgrimage places, in addition to the beautiful joy that we have this deep question and yearning for moksha, for liberation, for freedom. But which part of us wants that, and what do we need freedom from? तो मैं, I'll go back and forth a bit in Hindi and English for everyone. तो मैं हमेशा कहती हूँ कि मोक्ष शरीर से नहीं है. शरीर कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. ना शरीर मोक्ष चाहिए. ना शरीर बंधन है. ना शरीर मोक्ष प्राप्त करने के मन कर रहे हैं. किसी को कभी मोक्ष प्राप्त नहीं किया. Nobody has ever not had liberation because of their bodies. It's never a situation of, oh, you would have moksha if it weren't for your knees or it weren't for your elbows or, आप जरा कुछ कर दो इसी हाथ के बाद में फिर मोक्ष मिलेगा. मोक्ष आप और मोक्ष के बीच में केवल ये आर्म है या ये लेग है नहीं. शरीर तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. शरीर तो बहुत बढ़िया चीज़ है, भगवान ने हमको दिया, एक वरदान है. The problem is the mind. Mind is what keeps us from moksha, while simultaneously the mind is also what helps us realize we should have moksha. The soul is already free. The soul is not needing moksha. Soul is free already. It's the mind that keeps us stuck. And it's on a more complex and subtle level, it's the subtle body, sukshma sharir, jo man buddhi ahankar, जो जीव आत्मा के साथ जाते हैं एक जन्म से दूसरे जन्म तक. जब हम लोग शरीर को छोड़ देते हैं मरने के बाद, तो आत्मा के साथ सूक्ष्म शरीर भी जाते हैं. The subtle body travels with the soul, with this individual soul from one birth to the next birth. When all of our karmas have been extinguished, when the individual soul merges with the infinite soul, that's when the subtle body finally dissipates or dissolves back. But until then, it goes with the soul. So that which is keeping us from moksha is the workings of the mind, the ego, the intellect. All of that is actually what's blocking us from it. But simultaneously, when it's working well, when there's buddhi, shuddhi, sadhana, real intelligence, purity, spiritual practice, then the mind says, I want moksha. The mind needs freedom from itself. That is the game. Problem is the mind, and the one who suffers is the mind. The one who is stuck is the mind, and the one who is doing the making us stuck is the mind. So it's all a game of the mind. And this is where it said so beautifully, man eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo. Sab man ka kel hai. Are we free or are we stuck? It's all in the mind. And this is where sadhana comes in, where our meditation comes in, our prayer, our mantra jap, our seva. All of these things purify our mind. Puja Swamiji says very beautifully, he says, ऐसे नहीं है कि ध्यान करते करते भगवान आते हैं. It's not that your meditation brings God. God is always there. It's that your meditation, your prayer, your seva, all of your spiritual practice is that which actually cleans our ability to see, cleans our mind, so that we can experience the truth that is already there. You are free when you realize you're free. And that's why they say ki moksha can happen in a moment. It's all when the mind actually finally lets go of itself and realizes its freedom. So we do our sadhana not because it's going to bring God, but because it's going to let us see the truth. So that it's going to free us from these attachments. It's going to free us from the obstacles. It's going to free us from the illusion. It's going to free us from the false identification. Or fear to moksha. Beautiful. Yeah, last question. उधर जाके देख लेना आवाज आ रही है बहुत.
नमस्ते.
नमस्ते.
जय गंगे. और प्रणाम आपको. मेरा सवाल ये है कि what is your take on marriage given the fact that we are ever evolving and ever changing beings, as you rightly said in the first question that a gentleman asked, and given the fact that marriage is such a recent concept in the history of mankind on this planet? Thank you.
Thoughts on marriage. If we keep changing. So, it really depends what the goal is. The point of marriage, I don't think, is somehow the idea that two people in their 20s are going to somehow come together in a way that's going to be a perfect match for all of the way they will change between 20 and 80 or 90. Because you're right, we change so much. Sometimes people meet each other like that. Sometimes you hear, stories of people, they've been not only my soulmate, but my best friend for 70, 80 years. We finish each other's sentences. We think each other's thoughts. Occasionally you hear that. But the vast majority, you're right, it's not like that. But that doesn't mean that marriage as an institution isn't right. It serves, I think, a completely different purpose in society. What marriage does, when we can make it work, is it gives children a stable environment in which to be raised, which we know is critical for child development. We know that children do much better in two-parent homes than one-parent homes. Doesn't mean that as a single parent you can't do a fantastic job. You can. But in general, we know that having two parents is going to be better for your child than having one. Now, as you say, marriage is such a recent phenomenon in the history of humanity. But if you go back to the early days of humanity, we were living in tribes. We were living in groups. So a child may not have just two parents, a husband and wife who are married to each other. A child may have had 10 or 15 or 20 people or even more who took care of them, who raised them. maybe one or two primary caregivers, but lots of others. The dilemma is we don't have that today. People are living in individual houses with individual busy lives. And so if you didn't have marriage, as people changed, it would be like, oh, I like to be with you today. You're a good romantic or sexual partner today. Cello, let's be together. Now we have a child. Now I don't like you so much. So now I'm going to go and find a different partner. Now my child has a whole new person to be with. You have a whole new person to be with. So they go back and forth. That's what happens in a typical divorce. But then as I keep changing, I'm going to keep going through different partners. You're going to keep going through different partners. And our poor kid has got different rules, different values, different ethics, different standards, different foods, different bedtimes, different everything. Now, I'm all in favor of variety and diversity. But we know from child development that some level of consistency and knowing what to expect and life being somewhat predictable is really important for healthy development in children. And so if we just have a kind of sexual and romantic free-for-all, it doesn't work very well to raise healthy children. Unless you go back to the village situation and everybody's living together and the kid doesn't even necessarily know who's pairing off with who because they're being taken care of lovingly by a consistent, predictable, always available community. But we don't have that today. And so I think today marriage as an institution fills a lot of roles in society. We also know that in general, people who are married, happily married, do better. Men who are married live longer and healthier lives than men who are not married. Interestingly, it's not quite so true for women. But true, these true statistics. But men who are married actually have a longer life expectancy and a healthier life expectancy than men who are not. So we know that it provides a lot of actual benefits to our mental health, our physical health. But you raise a really important point, and what it leads us to is the awareness that a marriage is not just about us continually choosing each other because you are the one with the same likes and dislikes or exact same values or ethics or exactly, who I would necessarily choose today if I were re-choosing. But what marriage teaches us is resilience and commitment and the ability to sacrifice and compromise for something that ultimately in the long run is in all of our best interest. It's difficult at times. It's why divorce rates are skyrocketing, because it's a lot easier to just say, hey, this isn't working. Forget it. It's a lot harder to make it work, to choose peace over being right, or to choose peace and togetherness over whatever else you would like to happen in the moment. And so marriage actually offers us an opportunity of learning and growing that is far beyond just the pleasure of coming together with someone who, you see from across a crowded room today and you would choose that person. But people grow. They really grow in being able to adapt and change and compromise and sacrifice and learn as a marriage requires. So I'm definitely in favor of it. I mean, not personally, I've taken vows of renunciation, but in general, I think that society is much healthier having marriage than not having marriage. But yeah, I mean, I'm also not going to tell somebody where it's really not working out and it's really an awful and painful and unfixable situation for everyone involved. I would never say, oh, you must, bear this for another 50 years. But see how resilient you can be and how much you can learn and adapt and overcome in order to make it work, because that's where your lesson is. That's where your teaching is. Life is not an ATM machine. We've all gotten so used to this just like immediate whatever we want when we want it. It's like, oh, you want money? You just go to the ATM. You want something else? You go to the vending machine. You go to Amazon. It's like exactly what you want. You order it and you get it immediately. And so we're losing a little bit of this san shakti, this ability to just tolerate and withstand and be in difficult situations, because everything is now at our fingertips. And marriage really gives us that opportunity to develop that san shakti, that ability to withstand, to be resilient, to be tolerant, to be accepting for a higher good. Have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful evening, everyone. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining us from all over the world. Happy Thanksgiving again to those in America. And I look so forward to being together with you all tomorrow. So much love to you all.